In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my point of view around climate change. Recently, my brother-in-law came to me and said, "Rob, why don't you do a video on what the average individual can do about climate change?" And so I'm going to make 10 videos on this subject this evening. I'm going to break them up into individual videos on all the different things that the average Joe or Jane can do on climate change. But first, I want to talk a little bit about my view on climate change. So, where to start? It all starts with this mythology that we have as humans that you're all aware of, but you've probably never put words to, which is this concept that humans are inherently destructive. That at best, we can be neutral. And I think a lot of the rhetoric around climate change really focuses on this intrinsic negativity, this belief that we're a cancer or bane on the earth. And while there's a lot of evidence to indicate this or prove that it could be right, the reality is that the media just doesn't get paid to talk about the positive stuff, which is why it's great that things like YouTube and Facebook exist, and that I wanted to make this video because, in fact, I write a weekly newsletter which generally focuses on the positive things that we do as a species and how we can be just as positive as we are negative. So there's a ton of science around climate change, and I have to be honest, I haven't read a lot of it. And I think that would be true of a lot of people, that we haven't actually gone into the details around the science of climate change. But I think that there's some rock solid things that we can say about climate change. And I think we can use those things to inform how we act as individuals and as a species on the planet. And so I think it's safe to say that the climate has always been changing. I think the thing that is being debated by one side or the other, whether it exists or doesn't exist, is whether humans are contributing to it and whether humans are speeding it up. And for me, this is kind of like a divide and conquer argument. An attempt at creating divisiveness and polarization. And in a lot of ways, it's amazing how many people I talk to who feel as though they need to take a whole bunch of their life energy to argue whether or not climate change is real or if it's just a big conspiracy theory. And so the big thing that I want to get across in this video is that climate change is completely, or at least the argument anyways, that I perpetually have with people that are either inside of my bubble, because I live in a bubble. I live in a bubble where I'm surrounded by permaculture people, people that are creating earth repair, doing things that are healing the planet, growing topsoil, growing nutrient-dense food, growing happy and healthy animals, creating community, all that stuff. And so the debates usually happen, or the conversations usually happen when I leave that bubble and talk to people that are not within that bubble, and I end up banging my head against the wall because it's actually completely irrelevant, the whole argument of whether climate change is human induced, whether it's happening, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can talk about that is happening. So this year, I just read an article, came across my desk, where they talked about how the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is larger than it's ever been. Okay? There's no debate about where that dead zone is coming from. That dead zone is a result of confined animal feeding operations. It's a result of industrial soy, corn, and wheat, canola, industrial fertilizers, glyphosate or Roundup. All that stuff is leaching off fields, ending up in the Mississippi and going down into the Gulf of Mexico. It's creating massive nutrient blooms, which then creates huge blooms of vegetation, which then die off, and as they die and decompose in the water, they consume all the oxygen and create these massive die-offs. We know this to be true. We know the cause of it, and we know the solution. The solution is to start changing the way we eat, changing what we feed our livestock, which shouldn't be eating most of those crops in the first place. There's no debate about that. We know that burning diesel fuel produces particulate that causes lung cancer. We know that gasoline produces benzomatic rings, which will end up in the atmosphere for thousands of years. There's all these things that we know to be true, that we have very strong evidence, conclusive evidence, about the cause and effect of the actions that we're currently taking as humans. And so, to me, changing to sustainable energy, changing the way that we eat, the food that we eat, changing how we grow food, changing how we cycle nutrients within agricultural systems, changing how we heat our houses and how we power our houses, are decisions we can make without believing in climate change or not. And so if you are in the camp that believes that climate change is human caused and that humans are speeding it up, then you would probably want to do all the stuff that I'm going to talk about in these next 10 videos. But let's just for a second assume that you're in the camp that believes that climate change is a conspiracy and it's not real or it's not human caused. There's still really good reasons to do all the things that I'm about to tell you, whether you believe in climate change or not. Because the things that I'm going to talk about in these next videos are going to reduce dead zones, they're going to reduce cancer, they're going to increase longevity, they're going to create more wildlife habitat, they're going to clean up the air, they're going to save us money in the long run, they're going to decentralize the power of food and water. These are all things we can get behind regardless of what you believe in. And I'm not here to judge any of you with regards to whether you believe or don't believe in climate change, because like I said, it's completely irrelevant. All the stuff I'm going to talk about doing just makes complete logical sense for lots of reasons. Now, given that this is our only planet and that we don't yet have a way to get to Mars, or even a way to survive on Mars for any period of time, it's probably in our best interest to take care of it, to make sure that biodiversity is increasing, that we're not polluting our air. And so the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video is going to revolve around how an individual can take small and large steps to do their part to clean up the planet, because there's nobody arguing about the pollution, there's nobody arguing about the dead zone and all these other things. So do it for those reasons instead. Don't worry about the climate change debate. Don't worry about the argument. Get out of the divisiveness and stop creating separation between people that do and don't believe. Just do the right thing. So I'm going to talk about the next 10 things that an individual can do in the next videos to help make this change a reality. And your life is going to be better as a result of it. And I'll talk about all the individual benefits that you're going to get to make these changes, all the individual benefits that you're going to receive by enacting these changes in your life. So stick with me. And if you find these videos interesting, this is basically what I teach in my permaculture design course, except that I give concrete steps and actions that individuals can take to increase their resilience and to make the planet a better place. And for the people that are interested in learning more about permaculture, if this is a new word for you, or you've never been exposed to a permaculture design course, we have a free introduction to permaculture on our website, and I'll leave the link below. So make sure you check out the next few videos. I'm gonna make them interesting, positive, and inspiring. And I hope they help you to make those changes that are so important. Because when you start making those individual changes, guess what happens to everything else around you? What I've noticed over the last decade of being in the permaculture space is that humans are attracted to honey and not to vinegar. Unless you're a health nut and you like apple cider vinegar, but most of us go for the honey option. And so sitting around and talking about doomsday scenarios, which is the real issue that I find with the whole climate change debate, is that at best, if you listen to any of this rhetoric, we're only partially screwed. Like, there's no real hope in any of the conversations. It's like, at best, we'll become extinct in 100 years instead of in 50, you know? And I think it's really important to kind of point that out. Science is an incredible tool, but as I was saying to a colleague of mine today, when you do science, you're basically running experiments to try and illuminate the reality that we find ourselves in. So if you think about our reality as a dark black wall and that we're in a dark black room and we're trying to uncover the reality that we find ourselves in, every experiment that we do is like throwing an LED lit dart against the wall, and it creates one pixel on a gigantic canvas. And every time you illuminate one of those pixels, we get a slightly clearer view of the world. But a lot of times, and there's plenty of examples of this, and you can read all sorts of literature on this stuff, we illuminate pixels and it sends us in completely the wrong direction. Cholesterol is a great example of that. And all of the misinformation people have received because of bad advice around cholesterol. And so, while I'll say that there's a lot of science on climate change, I don't think that we should just assume that at best we're screwed. I think there's a lot more opportunity and hope to be had, and I don't think it's false hope. In fact, I've seen plenty of examples with farmers like Gabe Brown and Joel Salatin and my colleague Dakota Cohen, who are doing incredible things with large tracts of land, sequestering massive amounts of carbon, growing happy animals, and selling healthy products to consumers that want nutrient-dense food. There's plenty of hope out there if you want it. You just have to search for it. And my hope is that this channel, this YouTube channel, my Facebook page, my newsletter, is a glimmer of hope that you can receive on a weekly basis. A glimmer of hope that's based in science, true stories, real life examples of how people are making a change, and how if you apply yourself, even in small ways, in spite of the fact that these problems are absolutely massive and global, you can have an incredible impact. But you got to get rid of the fear, because the fear interferes with your prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain. It's the front layer of your brain that does all the hard thinking. And when we're scared of things, we instantly go into the lizard brain. And no good solutions ever come when we're in a space of fear. So take a listen to the next 10 videos. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are in that place of fear, the best advice that I have for you is to turn off the media sources that you subscribe to and start seeking out positive news as opposed to just reading whatever gets thrown at you. Because there's really no incentive for the media companies to send you positive news. Because they know they can make more money with a brain that's in fear mode as opposed to solutions mode. Thanks so much for taking a peek at this video. Make sure you like the video below. It really helps to prop the channel up and make sure these videos get out. Subscribe. And if you want that little bit of positive information on a weekly basis, check out vergepermaculture.ca and subscribe to our newsletter. And I'll make sure I put information to that free course in the show notes below. Have a great day.